The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. Still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kīlauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dan started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed and we knew we were getting to the local community and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha everyone, and welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Tracker. Today is Thursday, September 25th, 2025. Kīlauea is still erupting, currently paused, but we had episode 33 just after our update last week. So we'll recap this past week. And today we have Lou Atori and Dane DuPont here joining us. How are you gentlemen doing today? How are you doing today, Dane?
Doing good, yeah. Just a lot going on this week, and
happy to bring some new stuff to you and some important updates.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe you guys have heard about the Pohoiki. Dane and Lou were both down there. How is that for you, Lou?
It's good. We're busy. We spent a day in Kona on Saturday. Then Dan and I were down Pohoiki on Monday. It was pretty amazing to be there for that and watch them start the entire thing. We'll go over that a little bit later, but yeah, busy week as normal around here.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so Volcano is in its busy pattern, but giving us a few days break in between each episode here. So we're running around, keeping busy as always. All right, gentlemen, anything else you want to get into before we do our summary?
No, let's do it. If you got any questions, comments, go ahead and throw them in the chat and we'll see what we can do.
All right, wow. So I'm going to get ourselves set up here. All right, we good? Hello, everyone. This is our Hawaiian Volcano summary for September 25th, 2025. Following precursor activity that began over a week ago on Wednesday, we had episode 33 of Kīlauea's ongoing summit eruption begin this past Friday, September 19th, lasting by about 9 hours, with this only slightly inclined fountain coming from the north vent during the bulk of that eruption. The fountain was inclined maybe 60 degrees, so a little less so than the 45 or 30 degrees of the previous two episodes, meaning that it was able to reach heights of up to 800 feet or 240 meters, which actually exceeds the height of the caldera rim. You can see here in the background on this time lapse from the KW camera here. And if we look at the thermal view of that, we can see the eruption across the light changes of day and night, from that first precursory activity with overflows to that main burst, which put out lava flows hugging the northern edge of the caldera and a smaller flow that went along the southern edge. And according to the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, these flows covered about 2/3 of the crater floor. But unlike some previous episodes, they did not put out quite as much volume, only 6.3 million cubic meters, and did not reach all the way to the far eastern side of the crater, as you can see here. Here's a reverse angle from the V3 camera time lapse. And so we can see the precursory spatter leading up to the fountain, which you can see inclined here. And most of the activity was from the north vent, but you can see from this angle that the south vent also is active with some overflows and a low dome fountaining that does produce short flows for about 3 hours at the start of the eruption as well. The fountain heights of around 800 feet make this the highest fountains since July. And with a slightly shorter duration of around 9 hours than our recent episodes, combined with a still pretty high discharge rate, in par with the previous mini episodes as well, in the end, we are left with a slightly lower volume than we've had recently, but all well within the established trend and sustained pattern of Kīlauea for the last couple months here. The volcano deflated, as seen in the ground tilt monitors during the episode, and has since been recharging in its regular pattern, suggesting episode 34 is forthcoming, within the same pattern as we've seen for the past 3 months shown here and beyond 9 months of eruption now. As today is September 25th, and this eruption began on December 23rd, 2024. The USGS suggests that models indicate episode 34 is likely to start between September 28th and October 1st, a little less than a week away. So we'll see if that holds true. There was a big outburst of gas as usual. This is the satellite capture of the SO2 coming out of the episode 33 event. And you can see it blowing here through the atmosphere to the west of Hawaii Island. Lower level emissions during eruption were blown to the southwest in the national park, but variable winds in more recent days, including today, are bringing that low level fog that occurs between episodes across the island into communities nearby. So forecast shows impacts across several island communities over the next couple of days here. All the lava is still contained within Halemaʻumaʻu Crater National Park, with no increased threat to people outside of the summit region. We have had a few earthquakes, including some under the summit and on the south flank of Kīlauea, related to this growing pressure under the summit that's also trying to push the south flank and continuing this episodic this episodic eruption. Earthquake counts overall are still low over the past year, and the crater is still stretching north and south with each episode at the summit and not showing any sign of change at the rift zone near the people. And that's our Hawaiian Volcano summary for this week. All right, so we'll move on to our volcanic hazard summary, which is the gas right now. That's our main hazard since the lava is trapped in the crater. Occasionally some bits of Pele's hair and other tephra will fly out of there, but that's fairly localized for most of us. It's really the gas, and the gas is tracking the pattern of those particulate fallout anyway. So let's examine to start this time lapse from the side of Mauna Loa, the KP camera, showing that initial onset of eruption overnight. A big tall gas cloud rising and blowing. This is to the southwest here from this angle looking south. And you can see that after the main 9 hours of activity is over, that we have reduced emissions continuing, blowing the lower levels of the atmosphere across the Kau Desert as well. So this is really great weather for this time lapse this week. Really nice how this one turned out. So that initial burst of overflows, and then you're the main plume, the nice sunset in between there. So pretty epic today. And as I mentioned in our summary, we did catch this from Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. This is the Mauna Loa summit camera zoomed in to the area of Kīlauea, and here you see the glow from the night eruption, and there's a top of that gas cloud, gone now because the eruption is over, but you can see above this viewpoint that's just below 14,000 feet, that cloud goes well above that. Right, so USGS estimating that these clouds typically get up in a 20,000 foot range, which is why they issue aviation notices every time we have one of these episodes. So from Mauna Kea, similar view. We're zoomed in once again, and the contrast is not great during the daytime, but there you see that overnight eruption gas cloud there. You maybe can catch at the top of it was up here, and then by the end of the day, when the light is better, it's gone. But once again, very high emission cloud. Zooming in closer to the ground, now we're down on Kīlauea summit at the Uwikahuna site in the tower that looks down into the crater. So this is a view at night of that fountain peeking up above the crater rim with visitors here in the foreground. Let me loop this and play it again. And so one thing to look for is not only the visitor experience, which is maybe the first thing to ooh and ah about right here. Pretty epic. You can see that, what that might, and just imagine what that would look like and felt like with the vibrations moving through your body and the heat and the smell of it all already right there. Yeah. So that's one part of it. The other part, the reason we're starting off showing this is the gas, right? You can see that overnight the winds are a little calmer, but the gas does go mostly up, and then when it does blow off, it does seem to blow off in that direction over there. Right? But mostly it's going up from this tighter in view. If we come down to the V3 camera, now let's just look at the days since the eruption ended. So we'll start on the 20th and come forward. Our trade winds blow right to left, and that's mostly what we've had until recently. And here you see the winds change direction. And in fact, today we've had some variable winds, as we showed earlier from the satellite capture. And there is a still frame of the fog not blowing in that direction, but actually coming across the caldera and wafting to other parts of the community nearby. So more on that in a minute here, but let's come back out to our K2 camera and show you similar view, daytime views of the VOG over the last week or so with eruption in the daytime. You can see the winds shift here towards the end and blow this gas towards the camera right around now. Oh, I think I had a loop, huh? I did loop back around. Oh, no, here we go. There, this last frame, you can see the gas coming more towards the camera here. I guess my timing was off on that one. All right, so continuing, KP camera back on a hillside in Mauna Loa, looking down daytime views of the gas cloud back from just before the eruption. So our low-level intermittent plume, our main eruption plume, back to our intermittent plume. You see other weather coming through with the plume mostly low to the ground towards Ka'u. So here we are to the 24th, 25th, and we have whiteout up there today. So turning to the VOG measurement and prediction program, this comes from out of the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And among other products that have this VOG forecast dashboard here. And so we have the emissions coming out at about 1,500 tons per day is the average value between episodes of Kīlauea. And combined with the current weather models, predicts a dispersal of SO2, the plain gas emitted from the volcano in these areas you can see by concentration here. And normally we see this cloud move more in this direction and sometimes wrap around like that. And sometimes it has a wisps around, but you can see right now it's putting it more in this direction. It is going back over here as well, but you can see it's a variable going both ways. And so I do expect to hear reports of people in Hilo or on a saddle or elsewhere that don't usually smell this gas, reporting that they can smell it in these next few days here. That's the pure SO2. We can also click on a layer of sulfate aerosols because that SO2 reacts with the atmosphere and creates these particles that look like smog. That's where we get this term of VOG. And so further away from the volcano, you have these lingering effects. And here you can see those similar areas of patterns, but slightly different concentrations and timing. But that's the forecast for the next couple of days. It might be slightly foggy. At least we've passed the main pulse of the eruptive episode, because then you have tens of thousands of tons per day coming out during those, and at least we're down to this slightly lower, more tolerable value here that disperses across the island. Note though that all the stations on this map are in green. Everything's in green. Green doesn't mean zero, it just means it's below a certain threshold. And so you can see, depending on where you are, it's gone higher and lower, but has not crossed any of those thresholds. And we have other data sets. This one's from the state, air quality of all different flavors here. And you can see everything is in the green as well, with some slightly higher values in some areas, but same thing, nothing above the threshold. The Hawaii SO2 index map is also showing everything in the green. Our Purple Air Citizen Science Monitoring Network is loading, and it shows a little bit more impacts, right? So you can see somewhere here, like in South Kona, that there is higher values that have varied over time. And I always like to look at this station here that's just north of Volcano. It must be the Kulani area. And you can see there how this change in wind direction really brought the VOG to that station just today. And look at that, it went across the green, across the yellow, into the pink here, and has since come down a little bit. But that's the impact of the variable winds. So watch out for that. If you are coming into the national park, then you can check the park monitors as well. Currently, the park is showing not much wind at all. So they're showing a circle of the impact areas of where the VOG could be variably blown to. And let me reload this and make sure that this is still updated. What happened here? Yep, still showing 1 mile an hour. And if we come to our charts, we can see a little bit of the history, and we can see that this impact has been visible today. So let's look here at the campground particulate matter. See, got into the yellow today. The SO2 got into the orange today around the same time with that variable wind. Also at Kahuku, further downwind, slightly offset in time. You can see when the wind was blowing to the southwest, it got to Kahuku. Then it blew more to the northeast, got to campground, or maybe northwest and say, and then back to the southwest, got to Kahuku again. So that's that variable nature with high concentrations at particular areas at particular times across the park. In any case, if you're going to the national park, just follow the park guidance, park ranger, and all the signage, and they will do their best to keep you safe. All right, so coming now to, let's see here. This is our mounts project capture of that higher level of gas in the atmosphere. So let's just go to the mounts webpage here and just show you guys the sequence. On the 18th, not much captured. 19th is when we get that big plume blowing southwest. 20th, not much. 21st, 22nd, low level activity, blowing mostly southwest. Low level activity, hardly seen. Once again, blowing southwest. Let's get this bigger so everyone can see, right? There's a low level activity, and then a little more southwest. And this one, most current one up there, is the one that's VOG to the north here, as we've been talking about. So that's really our main impact, is the VOG and tephra. So that's why we talk about it so long and up front, but probably made the point now. Let's move on to our observations of this most recent episode. So, all right. Let's start off with, once again, this thermal clip, and I'm going to slow this down here and back to our original overflows that began back on the 17th. That led to more overflows on the 18th. You can see this trickle of lava flows down this ramp from the north vent. The 19th and overnight. The 19th is when we have the next series of overflows ramping up into the fountain, feeding a big flow. The flow moves for a while after the fountain stop. You can see it's still moving now on the 20th, and finally it gets cool and seems to stop moving by the evening of the 20th, or maybe by the 21st or so. And so we have the heat signals of this flow along the northern boundary here, which actually extends further over that way, and this one in the south, which looks smaller just because of the perspective that's farther over here. So that's our thermal view. And then moving on to our extended view of the KW camera. Once again, there's our overflows from the 18th. I think I skipped the 17th on this particular capture, but you can see here the nature of those lava flows creeping across that ramp. Then we come to nighttime. After some quiet, overflows begin again, and then comes a fountain. A big burst of flood that sweeps the near part of the crater floor, and then the fountain later establishes channel, so that cut across that, worked away all across to the northeast part, close to the eastern edge, but not quite there. And there's that flow in the south glowing in the nighttime as well. Pretty amazing. I really enjoy this footage here. Play this one more time. Or maybe what I'll do is let me rewind here to the one we had up top, which was a little faster, and play this one more time just to show you guys. And let me play with my settings here. Yeah, that's as fast as I want it here. So to just zoom in and look at some of these features, some of the changes, right? So there's a fountain itself. You see the cone. Cone is falling apart here after the fountain ends. It leaves these two scarps on this eastern side of the cone right there. You can see where the spray lands. That's this area looks brownish. There's all this tephra on here, right? And you can see it's tephra, but you also see the structure of lava flows. That's that big flood that burst out with the onset of the eruption there. The cone itself, there's all the cinder that's falling through here is getting carved up. You see there's like a rapids of lava through there. And then the cone itself is flowing on top of that lava as well. And that's why this flow moves so much longer than the lava output from the vent itself. You see the lava actually stops right there. You see this lava carving a rapids through there, and see that channel just disappears. It just gets carried away and munched in the that's rolling through here. Really fascinating stuff, right? And so you see there's both like this layer that's moving underneath, but also like a surface layer too. So let me see if I can point out this one little rock that seems to not move in the flood. Let's see, right there. Look at these rocks. They seem to be islands, and suddenly they get set loose and they fly down the channel there. So near the first flood, second flood, big sheets moving across. Just a little chunk that was anchored and not anymore. Very fascinating stuff. So that's the KW. What I can show you now is one image from noon per day, and I'm just going to go back to just since this episode began here. So similar kind of views, but maybe you can see this with a little less flickery now, how this cinder pile over here has really been spreading and moving under its own weight, collapsing. How transient, temporary that channel of lava was. It just flashes on here. Most of the days, it's just rubble through that area. You can't even see where the lava channel was anymore. It's all moved and deformed so much. And other areas, let's see here. You can't really see the south vent as well, but you can see the trace of the channel that flows from it. Pretty sizable, even if it's much smaller than the north vent. Yeah, we can otherwise pan across. I don't see, when we do this exercise, we often look for, do we see signs of the crater floor moving? Is lava injecting underneath? I really didn't see anything here. It's a little complicated by the fact that there's a little bit of wind during the day of the episode as well. So the camera does shift. You have to like make sure that what's moving is just one piece of the image and not the whole image frame on its own as well. So flow is obscured behind this rock over here, but you can see it makes it all the way to this northeast part of the crater over here. And that's our KW summary here. So let's move to the other side of the crater, the B1, circle our way around. I've zoomed it in here and cropped it so you guys can get a better view across the crater of the fountain. The north flow is coming around like this. South flow is coming around like that and gets about to there. And so here you can see how it's not really reaching the eastern side, even though I cropped it off right there. Yeah, and you see eruption ends around noon. And by that following evening, there's only a few spots of glow caught in the camera here. I'll play that for you guys one more time, and I'll actually zoom it in so you can have an angle from this side of the south vent and its flow and how transient that was, and the lava continuing to flow from the north vent through both of these channels. Okay, let's move on to the B1 camera and our noon views of that eruption sequence once again. So back to the vent, and there is a vent with that quick flash of fountain, and you can see where this new flow in places through here, like that. And that's that southern flow, and the northern flow going off in this direction. Through here is that big pile of cinder that looks like it's deflating. It's sagging through time here. And otherwise, not a whole lot of change. You see the other flow in placing up here in the front. And the flow front itself is right around in here. Something like that. So if I zoom all the way out, you can see that over here in the eastern part of the crater, there's no movement, there's no action, there's no coverage over here as well. And so this gives us a little different perspective of that area of coverage, right? So from the east, it looks like not a lot of, from here it doesn't look like 2/3 was covered, but we're really magnifying this front third and making it look bigger in the back 2/3, so that makes it tricky to see from here. Okay, the V2 camera, keep continuing to work our way around. So from the volcano house area, this is what that eruption looked like versus overflows in the middle of the night. Then the onset of the fountain, it kind of points towards the viewer from that perspective. So you don't see the inclined fountain from the side. You see it really the end of it, like where it's shooting towards you, and you can see not just the red, but where the lava is hardening into the black solid chunks and falling towards you that way as well. And that was a view many people had from Volcano House area. If you had some kind of magnification, of course, like that camera did. Working around as well, now we're to the southwest. This is an S2 camera. Glow from the north and south vents, overflows, inclined fountain, and south vent overflowing as well. So this one is on loop. And just so you can focus in on the south vent over here. It's just flashing, but you see the kind of lava rises up. It seems to flood the thing and then drain out. And at one point, it seemed like it had buried the whole thing completely, but then drains out. And we basically had intermittent activity, but almost pistoning up in this area, pistoning and overflowing, similar to the overflows we saw at the north vent prior to that. And while all this happened, there was no change at the north vent at all, which is interesting. So these are connected, but there was a different source of pressure. Maybe there's a different gas bubble pushing out some slightly degassed lava from the side or something like that, because it did look a little bit different in character than this big spray of lava we see coming out over here. So interesting, connected, but different as well. So moving around from S2 pretty close to the V3 here. Nighttime views of the spatter there. And there is that fountain you can really see incline well, and you can see the south vent doming really best right there. And you can see how later on this north vent is feeding this channel that moves around to the south of the crater through that branch, with the main branch continuing to the northeast. So that was the V3. And we'll end with the V1 here of this sequence circling around the crater. Overflows where many of us watching and lead up. The fountains inclined again as well. You don't quite see the south vent as well in the background. But here we are. We do see this movement in the foreground, this rapids of lava that seems to be changing shape. Right? That was a cool sequence right there at the end, right? The river of lava is here, but then this piece of land is moving in, so it's squeezing this channel closed, actually. See if you guys all notice that. Look how fat the channel is, and here it's getting pinched closed from the sides of all the material moving in. Pretty fascinating how dynamic and active these landscapes can be. So that'll be our last time lapse we'll share here. There are a couple of USGS image releases. So the first one from September 19th of the episode itself, they document the overflows early on from the north vent, noting the north vent is approximately 65 feet from the base of the vent to the perched area. So that's 65 feet between that height and that height there. Believe it or not, 6-story building. Hard to tell when you're looking at it like this. And this seems like a small zone when we look at the giant fountains coming later on. The dome fountains were rising 10 to 15 feet high here. So then they're on scene to capture the start of the fountains. By daybreak, there they are with their videography equipment, taking observations. This is a great image from Matt Patrick, looking over the end of Crater Rim Drive. This is the edge that's collapsed into the crater there. But you see some tephra that landed from fountains on top of the road here, or blew in from around. In this perspective, you can see just beyond there, a channel of lava fountain inclined. A pretty great picture of Mauna Loa in the background with a nice heat shimmer obscuring it up there. Pretty amazing stuff. And from the ground where they observe, they can just see the tip of this fountain peeking above the rim there at that moment, with the plume above as well. And they also are finding, continuing all the tephra, but some special ones like this bigger lava bomb, a really light, frothy piece. You see he's just holding it, no problem, with one hand while holding his camera in the other to photograph that. This is Drew Downs. This one landed mostly intact, a couple of cracks. And there's that same road, the geologists that had been observing, turning around and walking back after finishing an activity. More of a wide view with a bigger plume compared to the size of the fountain and the impact of it. There's Mauna Loa. You can see here how this gas cloud is rising and blowing off to the west there. Right? A little more to the west and southwest, it looks like in this particular image, in a higher level. But hard to really see from the perspective. Still, you can really see that nice shape of a gas cloud there. So that's our first image release. And the second one comes just yesterday on the 24th, as the scientists did an overflight by helicopter of the crater. They looked down into the vents. They did not see any red lava anywhere. They have been seeing glow from the cameras in the evenings at night. There's still degassing going on, but they still were checking on what's going on. Didn't see any lava in the holes, but they did land and collect samples of these flows to do chemical analyses and tell us more about it in the future. So we really look forward to those stories when they come out. I bet we'll have a really good January Volcano Awareness Month comparison of our episodes. If we keep going by then, we'll have about 50 at that point in time. So this is a really fascinating image. HVO scientists service a monitoring station on Kīlauea volcano. The site's only accessible by helicopter due to the 2018 summit caldera collapse. So this road is an isolated portion of Crater Rim Drive, over 100 feet below the current crater rim. So we've seen this. We know this piece of land. There's a road. Which, for me, I didn't know that anyone was landing down there with a helicopter and that they were installing monitoring equipment down there, actually. So you can see the road right there. It's kind of hard to see that. So let's get a zoomed in view. There is our geoscientist in his orange flight suit looking at some kind of monitoring equipment on the ground there. And there's a perspective of the road with a big zoom lens of where this guy is. And look, not only is this whole piece floating, but there's cracks all through it, all across through here, across several of these cracks. I wouldn't want to stand on that piece. This one seems a little safer, but it's probably not a seismometer or something that requires a good coupling with the ground if it's got all these cracks all around here, right? So interesting to see that and look at the road, how many cracks and buckling it's got through it. Even though it's still coherent, it rode down on this block all the way down into the crater and accrued some damage on the way there, as you can see. Pretty amazing stuff. So, surprise of the monitoring station there, but then some other final views looking at the summit of Kīlauea, Halemaʻumaʻu crater with the big pad of black lava. That's the surface of this filling that's been going on for years now, with this vent and ramp complex on the western side of the crater here. And then Mauna Loa behind it as well. Turning around from here, where we have episodic fountains at Kīlauea summit for the first time in our modern recorded history. They turn and look back the other way on Kīlauea. And at first you might say, oh, this is interesting, but what's this got to do with anything? Well, there's a story hidden in here. We have in the foreground Kīlauea crater, and we have here to the side Pu'upua'i. This is the cinder cone formed from episodic high fountains of Kīlauea that occurred here as well. And on the horizon, we have the East Rift Zone. We have here on the right, Mauna'ulu, which itself had 12 high fountain episodes back in 69 to 71. All the way to the left is Pu'o'o, and it had high fountain episodes, 44 of them, from 1983 to 86. And in the middle is Kananui Hamo, an older lava shield that USGS notes likely also had lava fountains, but no contemporaneous written records exist of its eruption over several hundred years ago. Right, so we're actually looking at here is all the places that have had episodic high fountains right behind the camera, and then all these 4 spots here. And then if you were to, yeah, that's really it that we know about right now. There's a little asterisk, which is down in Kapoho. There were high fountains as well, but not episodic. Right? These high fountains of the eruption in 1960 were high, but they stayed high. There wasn't starting and stopping with pauses. It's a little bit different category there. All right, so that's our observations. We can wrap it up here with just a live look in the V3 camera at that active degassing. Well, obviously active, passive. It's passively degassing without lava coming out, but the gas is coming out right now, is what I'm trying to say. There it is. And normally, this is a V2 camera. Normally the wind is like that, so you can see we are in these variable wind conditions that might be blowing fog into the park and Volcano Village areas and further around. V1 camera is whited out from the fog blowing right at it. So you can see this is not what we usually get. A couple other views. There is the KW camera earlier. And now slightly clearer. Thermal camera, not showing a whole lot of spots of heat, a couple of little places where the flow is open and releasing heat. And from the reverse angle, the V1 camera, and see was look at the wind at that moment back at 2 o'clock earlier today, blowing this plume over before it starts rising straight up, and pretty amazing. But right now, let's give it a refresh, and there you see a little bit less angled, just blowing from the southwest to the northeast, apparently. All right, guys, I will pass it to you for our midpoint break.
All right, let me get Lou in here. Thank you, Phil. We'll be back with you in a moment. All right, bring in Lou. Let's go ahead and get set up to talk about Pohoiki a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get there, right? Let's drop the community corner up in here. We're going community corner, and then we'll drop Pohoiki down towards the latter part of it.
Okay.
I got it set up there. And Phil took off. Phil, we'll get you on the back side of this because I do have a question about the goalpost kind of moved again on something for this episode. I don't know if anybody picked up on it or not. We'll talk about that when you get back. All right. Can we add that to stage? We got to pull that off of there.
Got to pull it off.
There we go. All right. So there is some news in the park today, besides for episode 33 ending and 34 priming up. Everything that's been closed is still continued to be closed except for one place. We're going to cover that there. The temporary closures, the Kīlauea Trail and the switchbacks, they're still working on that. Halemaʻumaʻu and Monoleo Road are still closed, but you can get access. We'll go through that. Here's the warning for the wasps. A couple days ago, somebody did send me a message and spotted some out there. If you see them, contact a ranger, let them know where you saw them so they can take care of them. Please don't get stung. Don't swat or aggravate them. They're not like a honeybee. They're going to call their friends. This is the lava viewing locations. It's a question we get all week, is where to view the lava. There's really no bad spot to watch an episode up there. All around the entire park, you're going to see it. I would recommend going to a couple of them. You can just walk down the trail and post up somewhere and do fine. Just stay in bounds. This is a image that came from ZD Taylor 1 off of our Discord. Thank you, Zach. Numerous signs along Devastation and Byron ledge trails warn visitors to stay on trail. You're going to see these signs that are out there. If you don't have a headlight, you're going to walk right past it. So I'd have a headlight or at least your cell phone light on at night. This is a shot from Lance Page at pagefilms.com. Thanks, Lance. This has got a check that out there, a little vortex in there, Dane. And the Tephra flying. Lance grabs some good ones
back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's our welcome center up at KMC. That is the location of our temporary visitor center. It's all the way up into the park. Once you go through the fancy new roundabout, you make your way all the way up there. Go in there and inquire about park programs. They're really only showing life on the edge, but that doesn't mean they're not running something. If the weather's good or they have extra hands, there may be a sign outside that gives the programs for the day. You can't miss it. You're going to see the big flag in the middle there at KMC. And parking is back behind. Easy parking is back behind HVO, the new building that they're working on there. There are your viewing areas. I put little eyeballs on there. We kind of like that to help make it easy to see where to view from. And also mark the closed off areas. You don't want to be out there, not just because there's cracks in the ground that Phil was just showing you, but that's where the fog's blowing. And that's where the Tephra's flying. So watch yourself. And bring your own water still. We have something new at the park, but we don't have water yet. So visitors to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park need to bring their own drinking water. I had to throw the warning AI up there today because getting close. Getting close.
Yeah,
Now that is a current image from this morning that it worked in there for me. Not bad. I mean, even put in the USGS, put the timestamp in there. Gemini.
I like how that one without a top squirts water into the dog's mouth.
Well, let's not dig too deep into this. We're just gonna move on from there. Bring your own water to the park. They do have some water for sale at the Volcano House and up at KMC, but if you're there after hours, you're gonna be high and dry. But big news, a flushable bathroom is open again. There's no water bottle filling station at this location, but there will be. These are the restrooms that were closed in 2018. We were just talking about this, Dane and I, the other day, about Pohoiki and this boat ramp. It's taken 7 years to get to this point. Well, it's taken 7 years to get a flushable bathroom up there at Waikahuna. This is where the Jagger Museum and HVO was once located. Those were torn down after the 2018 eruption. The restrooms are further from the edge of the restrooms are further from the edge, closer to the parking lot, and the park replaced the water lines and the water tank as part of the disaster recovery project. And I read that because we're hoping for no issues, because we've already had a water issue over at the Thurston Lava Tube bathroom. So hopefully we'll hold it together up there. But hey, flushable toilets. All right. There's your closures at Helena Poly up the Mauna Loa Road, as well as the Kīlauea Iki switchbacks. Helena Poly and Mauna Loa Road, if you have a backcountry pass, you can contact the ranger, go to the backcountry office, and possibly hitch a ride out there so you don't have to walk all the way up or all the way out. It's still pretty toasty out there. You can always call it 808-985-6011. And please pull valuables out of sight, throw them in your trunk, pack them with you, lock your vehicles, just be safe up there. There's the HVO building in the background. It doesn't look like that now. It's quite a long. Hey, Dane, we haven't been up there and seen that in a while, have we?
Nope.
We need to make a run to see where they're at. Phil mentioned that. I think Phil was the last one that gave us a report that it's been moving right along. And big news for the deaf community on the island. The Deaf Digital Resource Library, and of course our ASL interpreters aren't here tonight. A space where deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind individuals and allies can come together to access resources, history, stories, and tools in one place. This library needs some help from you guys. It's a call to action. If you care about accessibility, cultural preservation, and community connection, your voice is needed. They're looking to form an advisory board. Scan that QR code or reach out to Rebecca at signsofFun.org and help them out there. So it's good to see them making some headway there. And there is us in Kona this weekend, blazing sun for a while. Dane with the lava board, giving the demos. Phil was working the viscosity bubblers, and we got to showcase our new AI presentation there. So that was a lot of fun. Dane, did you?
Definitely hot. I mean, it was you and that black tarp setup that we were trying to use to make it a little dark inside.
Yeah,
made it a little hotter.
It was a lot hotter. Normally I don't get worried about myself, but I think there was a moment that I got worried about myself. It was getting warm.
Yeah,
well, it was all right. We made it through it. And let's go into our Pohoiki boat ramp information. Dane and I went out on Monday and got to watch them break things open and start the water flowing in. I'm going to cover this real quick. I'm going to let Dane take over. We worked for months to get the equipment down there for a camera, 2 cameras, so we can document this. And we are just now releasing this to the public at hveri.org/Pohoiki. It's pretty amazing to watch all of this develop, and we want you all to be able to enjoy that as well. So feel free to use this camera as long as you go with credit to Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. And if you'd like to support us, our information is right there as well at hveri.org/donate. And Dane, I'll let you roll.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and swap that out. And let's go ahead and I'm going to start actually with your drone footage just to talk over. So this was some drone footage that Lou was able to take the other day. Let me go ahead and restart it. Down there, we were able to get access through the County of Hawaii and Goodfella Bros Construction and get out there the first day that they were able to make that breach. We've been keeping an eye on it, expecting it for weeks now, but Monday was the day. And the plan is to start at one side and work your way backwards and take as much dirt and sediment out of there as possible, as fast as possible. So these guys are working now 7 days a week. We see them out there usually around 6, 7 a.m. So they're getting it early. And they're going hard at this thing. They're expecting it to take into some point into October before they have that big levee removed. And that crane there that you see in the background on the right, that'll be used to pick out the big boulders in the middle of the channel where that excavator arm can't reach. So yeah, it's a big step on this project is this, and we've been talking about it for a long time, getting the drone up the day that they make the breach. I did underestimate how much levee would be left for them to remove. That is a lot of material there.
Yeah, as we watched it, as we were watching it on Monday, you see right here, slowly, one scoop at a time. They had 2 trucks running material up to the top. It really, I was surprised at first. I was like, what do you mean October? We saw this thing get put together pretty quick, but the removal now, after watching this for a few hours down there, it's going to be a while. And that's sped up right there. It's a lot of material.
Yeah, so it's a slow process, but they're going to be going hard at it. And right now the beach is closed. The Pohoiki whole area is closed. The gate is locked, and don't try and go down there and just check the progress. More than likely you're not going to get access, or somebody's going to come and ask you to leave. But yeah, it's such a big project. We do have some time lapses here of the entire sequence, so all of the work that's taking place so far, as well as just the work days, the times in which the shovel's in the dirt, so to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and I like this clip.
It's almost there.
So you can see the shape. So they didn't remove that section between those hot ponds in Second Bay and the new dredged out area. But it's low enough that I wonder if it could act as a storm surge, way to alleviate storm surge by it running up there as well. So it's interesting. All right, let's go ahead and get into some time lapses. So this is work days only, right? This is just when they're down there messing with the thing.
And at this time, it was still just Monday through Friday.
Right. And this started in June 9th. And most of it happened relatively quickly, right? Because we're into mid-June and late June at this point. And by late June, they really have most of that material removed. And then we go into a holding pattern waiting for the crane to get here. And then there was a storm surge and some other stuff that caused some delays and some concerns. And finally, you can see the water overtopping that levee, ruining whatever they had prepared there. So have to go back out, fix it again. You can see them doing that now and getting it ready to make the push in. Finally, on the right there, they go back in and remove a little bit more material, hopefully alleviating some of the concerns about flooding being potentially impacting the house in which our camera is located. But yeah, it's a big project. We're talking about the third highest grossing boat ramp in the state, and that's ahead of many Oahu harbors that you would think have so much traffic in them that for fishing they would definitely know. But Pohoiki was a powerhouse and a staple in the community, and we're down there talking to the lifeguards the other day, and one of the things that they mentioned is that you have a whole generation of kids right now that didn't grow up surfing, didn't grow up fishing, didn't grow up doing all the things out of Pohoiki that have happened since time immemorial.
Just swimming, right? He's even talking about. Just not even swimming.
Who's going down there to swim? I'd recommend against swimming in that pond type of thing. Like, I've long recommended against it. I think plenty of others have too. So it's like a small fraction of what used to be down there. That place used to be absolutely packed every day of the week. It felt like, and then twice on Sundays.
Yep.
Now it's just a shell of itself, but hopefully once this happens, I'll go ahead and show the entire time lapse now. So this includes our night cycles, and we might not let all of this one run, but we probably will. But yeah, it's a long process, and things like the surf break hopefully could be restored potentially with this project, at least partially, because as of right now, there is no surf break down there. Not for surfers, maybe for bodyboarders, they could catch that wave and get out in time, but it's a shore break and the seafloor jacks up way too quickly out there. So there's a lot of potential on this. We hope that it can stay open. As you can see there, that there is no supports on the sides of this thing, and if south swell or more debris from the 2018 eruption site were to wash into the area, could complicate things potentially quickly. So there's a whole question about maintaining this thing, and it's interesting to see. People ask about, couldn't you just drain all the water inside of Pohoiki Bay? Well, you can see all the water raising and falling with the tide.
You're not getting it out.
Still coming through.
Yeah.
Enough that you're not draining that thing. That's
No.
not watertight by any stretch of the imagination. No. So yeah, it's just a time of wait, and we'll keep posting the time lapses to Hawaii Tracker. If you do want to check this out for yourself, we did put this webcam access to it online, so it's at hveri.org/Pohoiki. And there you can check out the latest camera image that this thing has taken. We don't have the newest time lapses there, but we do drop those on Hawaii Tracker. So check that out. I think that might be it for me and Pohoiki.
Yeah.
And we will go ahead and get Philip back in here. But yeah, it's just there is nobody that we have talked to that is involved with this project that will sit there and say, oh yeah, this has been done before. All of them will be like, no, we've never even heard of anything like this. And we are all waiting to see how it ends up. And part of the process is documenting it. So we did post this web camera out of HVERI, put up the money for it. There is no grant or anything like that. So if you want to support that project, we are, happy to take donations, and we do those over at hveri.org/donate.
Yep. All right. And if you'd like to sign up for our episode eruption notification email or our newsletter, you can do that as well at hveri.org/subscribe right there. And Dane, we'll catch your breath and keep moving.
I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody that tuned in today, but first I would like to thank the County of Hawaii through the VIVI grant program for providing support for this program, as well as our other programs, our digital resilience and youth development, to be able to continue our work and, do fun things like our Pohoiki camera. But we really do rely on viewers like you, the likes, the subscriptions, the shares, and all of that stuff, as well as the donations that came through. Definitely a big help. And right now it's always a crunch at this time of the year, so it feels like. So we did have some donations wanted to highlight here from Norm with a $20 donation. We're on the donation platform.
No, Norm actually, that was my mistake. Norm actually donated here on YouTube through our donation fundraiser here on YouTube. That's a minor typo on my end. Thanks, Norm.
Colby with a $20 donation as well. Appreciate the support there. David coming in with a $50 donation. Awesome. Thank you, David. Martha also with a $50 donation. Appreciate the support. And I think that does it, unless there's one I've missed.
Nope, you're good.
Norm is in there laughing. All right. So I think that gets us through it.
Yeah.
And the one thing about the hot ponds down there, I heard a bunch of people like, oh, they're closing all the hot ponds. None of the hot ponds have been touched. The only one that kind of got touched was the ramp itself, right? Because there was some heated water in there. But the second bay pool, the old pool that existed before 2018, the one at the end of second bay, the one at excavator/dead trees, all those are still there, right? So they're going to be able to be enjoyed by people. The one thing we heard, though, from the lifeguards that is worth mentioning is that they have been having a rather significant amount or concerning amount of cardiac issues occurring in these hot ponds. These ponds can get up to 109 degrees Fahrenheit, very hot, and any kind of heart issue, it'll elevate the heart rate, and you go to get up out of the hot pond, and all of a sudden you're lightheaded and fall down. So they asked us to help convey that
a little bit.
Yep.
I
Also,
think
one thing that Dane talked about earlier with the gates being closed, it's not just closed to vehicles, it's closed to foot traffic in the park. So you can't just park outside and walk in. The entire park is closed for everybody's safety right now.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Let's go ahead and bring Philip back in here and get into our second half, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Lou.
You got it.
All right. And I think we're ready. Oh, you are muted right now.
I said, all right, let's get Lou back in here. Lou had something he wanted to say.
Oh,
Something he wanted to ask.
and now you're muted.
What's
There's a
going on
button.
around here? All right.
There's a button you press.
I see it. I see it. All right, Phil, pull up the V3 cam from episode 33 where the south vent is opening up. Okay, so everybody knows that HBO has been putting out pretty good play-by-play, if you want to, lack of a better term, of volcano messages during these episodes. And they're super informative, keeps us on track of what's happening. And they drop something that we haven't seen before. At least I don't ever remember seeing them say it like this. I'll wait till Phil gives us that south vent. I think you got to go back till the dark, till it's still in the evening when the south vent was opened up.
Yeah, it's just on a loop.
Okay, there you go. All right, so let's see here. It says the pulse continued for 2 minutes and then rapidly drained back into the south vent, ending the south vent eruption. So my question is, are they labeling each vent as its own individual eruption within the episode?
No, I think that's just a term. That's just yeah, I don't know, multiple meaning of that word, I suppose, right? But no, yeah, all same eruption. But maybe a fusion would have been a better word for them to choose. But hard to blame them when I keep saying that the terms aren't as important as the meaning of them.
Mhm.
I can't go turn around and pick on them for using the wrong word now. So
Yeah, right. Well, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's always tough to find words sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was the one thing that I saw. I do like all the morning or evening, whatever time it is. It's coming 20 minutes, 10 minutes at a time, depending on what's happening. It's pretty good. That was the only one that I seen that was interesting. At the end of that, it says the north vent fountains continued unchanged. It just caught me off guard when I saw that. Like, what did I miss?
Right. Yeah, I think it's just one of those in the moment word choices, perhaps.
Yeah, and that south vent just couldn't get enough gas to lift that up off the ground much more than that right there. That was probably one of the largest ones of the pulses that it had.
We've also seen just different people say things differently. So we've heard one time they're talking about, I don't know, the summit of Mauna Loa, and they start pushing on like, this is what it is. This is what it is. And then you go listen to a speech by somebody at USGS and they use the complete opposite terminology type of thing. It's like, okay, they're using the old way or a different way of speaking about it. But that terminology consistency, we're not as concerned with. You just happen to notice every once in a while things like that.
All right, carry on. I'm out of here.
All right, thanks, Lou.
Yeah, thanks, Lou.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good thing to examine all those text updates and the terminology. And sometimes there is information we can glean out of there, and sometimes it might just be something unintentional like that, right? So that is why we go through it. And great that Lou's paying close enough attention to notice those little subtle changes like that, right? So
yep.
On our end, we can start by recapping some of these text updates. We'll do this first part quickly since we did this first part last week. But just to recap how we got here, on the 13th on Saturday is when we had the first glow visible from the camera. That was a Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago. By a few days later, that Tuesday, there was a glow in both vents in the live stream at night. And that Wednesday morning was when they had those first overflows at 8:38 a.m. on the 17th. They basically continued on the 17th further. On the 18th, it was a little slower. but fountaining was expected, as we relayed in our update last week. So fountaining actually began at 3:11 a.m. on the 19th, with initial fountains greater than 500 feet and convective plume at 10,000 feet above ground level. Right? So that was the first announcement of the onset of episode 33, and then we have the volcanic activity notice paired with the volcano notice for aviation, which have largely the same text and different formatting for different audiences. Right? But it's basically the same thing here. And then we have, after that, we're looking at the messages, as Lou is saying here. So here's observatory messages. And so they were updating more earlier on. They note at the beginning of the episode at 3:11, the activity notices, fountain heights, that they're inclined to the northeast about 60 degrees, less in episodes 31 and 32. Highest since July. That information was out pretty early on, right, by 4 a.m. They note the 4 a.m. onset of the south vent dome fountain with no change in the north fountains. Posts of lava flooded the south vent, burying a cone at 4:05. So 5 minutes it lasted, 7 minutes, and then drained back in the south vent, ending the south vent eruption. Then north vent ending, and then final statement here. So it looks like from this, you know, it's useful information, but it's not complete, is what I would warn you, right? If you were to just read this, you might think, okay, the south vent had just one pulse of lava, but that's not actually the case. We'll keep moving forward. The eruption is going to go until noon, but at 9 a.m. we have a daily update issued by the USGS, which doesn't give us much more information apart from fountains had ramped up by that point in time. But it lasts until noon. So at 12:49 p.m. we have the follow-up volcanic activity notice and notice for aviation pairing that notes 12:08 p.m. cessation of fountains after just under 9 hours of continuous fountaining. And here we see the south vent stopped erupting at approximately 6 a.m. this morning after a few intermittent outbursts. So here we can see that the story was not quite complete. There was that we just had a report of the first outburst that lasted until 4:07, and then it happened several more times, ending at 6 a.m. So that's why you have to be careful, especially with those messages and the timing of them. We do try to be a little bit more comprehensive and complete in the daily updates in these status reports as well. They note the inclination 60 degrees. That episodes 31 and 32 were at 30 and 45 degrees of tilt. Right? That's why our fountains were higher now. They note approximately 8.25 million cubic yards or 6.3 million cubic meters of lava erupted during the episode, and flows covering 2/3 of the floor of Halemaʻumaʻu. Right? That's most of the information we'll get is from this update in this iteration. Here is its paired notice for aviation that came through as well, where we still had color code orange. And since then, we've had several daily updates, but I'll skip ahead to today's update, where we have enough data now. We've seen glow from the vents, especially the south vent. Summit's still reinflating. We have all the data, and we have models indicating episode 34 is likely to start between Sunday and Wednesday. That's the current prediction of the window. Of course, we can see that these things have changed more often than not. They get delayed if there's a slowdown in the inflation rate, but occasionally they get moved forward, like we saw. Like they moved it forward last week, and we moved it back to the original point that it was, and so it ended up about a wash. But sometimes it does get moved forward as well. So as of today, we have we have elevated outgassing of the inter-episode pause era. So it's repressurizing. Magma is in the vent, although not visibly, just glowing. And we're just waiting for what happens next week. Similar pattern as we're used to now. Moving to the USGS timeline page. This is a little bit behind. We still haven't seen quite the update in the dates here, but we do have those from the report we just showed you guys. So from that, we can give you guys some basic stats. Here is the pause of the vigorous phase of eruptions, the high fountains, we'll call them, right? So we had a longer, in fact, the longest pause thus far was before this most recent episode here. But not to be concerned, it's similar to the other two of the previous three, and obviously it did not stop the episode from happening. Fountain heights are just depend on the angle of the nozzle of the vent. Interesting that we've seen the nozzle change from being 30 degrees to 45 degrees to 60 degrees. What will be next? 75 degrees and then 90. So maybe whatever geometry was in there, it's correcting itself slowly over time, and through these fountain episodes, it's getting more upright again. And we're seeing that here with this fountain height, almost 800 feet. Right? Fountain height is not very telling because, as we mentioned before, some of these episodes over here might have had fountain heights this tall had the thing been pointing straight up, but it wasn't. For duration, our duration was a little bit lower than our recent trend, but well within the range that we've seen, so nothing that unusual or abnormal there. Right? It just means that with a slightly lower duration, we have less volume coming out, even with a higher discharge rate. Here's episode 33. We're just under 200 cubic meters per second. This is preliminary, averaged, with a gas in it, all that. But still, we can compare using the same technique across all the data from the eruption thus far. So see, there's 30, 31, 32. These are all in the same. Within the error, I'd consider these to be all the same. Right? 29 was a little lower. 27. These are really since 23. This is all one population of high values, which we hadn't seen since the first episode for this other phase in between here. So really, this is just showing us that what's happening now is the same as what was happening for the recent few months here. Right? As far as it's getting out really efficiently, when it's coming out fast, in great volume. And that means we've had greater and greater volumes of eruptions climbing up with time, except for this one because it didn't last quite as long. So that's why it drops down, even though if it was coming out just as fast as the other ones. And the last one I'll show you here is this height versus discharge rate. Now we're going to try to combine this discharge rate with the height. The height obviously is affected by the angle, but this tells us more about like the character, right? Like the personality, if you will, of this eruption. Like how does it look and feel to us? Is it looking like it's really high and shooting really high up there? Is it pumping out gangbusters, or is it just trickling out? And this is like some version of that, right? So we have our initial fissure and our recent episode 30 had very high rates of output, but very low fountains. In fact, 31 and 32 and 29 were all in the same kind of range right there, right? And before that, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 were all very high fountains and high discharge rates. Those were our most spectacular ones, shooting a lot of lava really fast, really high in the air. That's like our peak experience thus far, right? So now at 33, we're moving back from where we just were towards that again. And we'll see what continues with that trend, but this is a little bit more the personality, the character of eruption. And it's just, so we can all think about and consider what might come with episode 34. So that'll be the last graph. One of these generated graphs of the eruptions. We'll show you some monitoring graphs in a minute, but first we'll turn to the satellite data. This is the Mounts project, capturing automatic satellite data, visible and INSAR, all different, the SO2 as well here. And so we do have an INSAR image released on the 25th, going back 6 days, from the 19th to 25th. And we also have it from the 19th that goes back 6 days. So really in the last week, we have two releases, these two, which is interesting. So the most recent one we have to show with you guys right here. Don't see a whole lot. You see this little kind of speckled pattern is where the tephra fallout was downwind with the episode. So this one, the 25th, is capturing episode 33, actually. Maybe if I zoom in, you can see a little bit of inflation happening, very localized in some parts underneath the crater there, like through all this other noise. But really what caught my eye most of all here is, well, besides this lack of anything else visible here, is there's a feature over here off to the side, what we've seen before. It seems to be popping up again. Right? If we look, this goes from blue to green to pink, blue to green to pink. It seems like this area here might be inflating as well. Right? Along with, so maybe there's some complex pathway that's feeding magma in an area here that goes through here to feed to the side of the crater where the vent actually is. It's not very far. So not that surprising that there might be some other effects nearby underground. And so that's the most recent capture from the 25th right there. I'll take it back to the one just before that, the 19th, and look, that feature is there again, except this is leading up to the eruption. The episode hadn't happened yet. We're catching this previous one all through here. But in this case, we're going blue, red, green, which is blue to red to green. We're actually going away. This is actually, looks like it's deflating in the day leading up to the most recent episode, right? So interesting how that there is something going on there. You know, we can't say exactly what or how, but there is another component of this magma reservoir that seems to be activating over here. And just to be clear, this does not cause any extra concern or worry for me. Like, you know, this is not like it's coming. This is with this kind of circular pattern is still pretty deep, and it doesn't seem like it's going to erupt out of here when it has a hole right there to come out of way easier. So it's really not. It's just more about what's happening with the dynamics underground. Maybe when we're seeing signals on other tilt meters moving ahead of time, maybe it's got to do with these multiple areas that could be activating in a build-up to our episode. So I am eager to learn more about this from the scientists when they have more data and information to share with us. But so for comparison, let's go back from this one in 19th to the one before that. The one before that, you see, does not have this feature over here. Instead, we're seeing this inflation center under the center part of the crater there, and the one before that, similarly, inflation or deflation, depending on the snapshot, but with nothing out here. So really interesting, and we're having this little bit of evolution of signal and showing a complexity, right? And as we've said, this eruption has been going on for a while. It's building a lot of pressure in the summit. It's likely pushing the south flank. Maybe it's able to push into other areas nearby and expand a storage system. And that kind of opens some possibilities for what could come next at some point in the next months or years. So that's the insight we have. We'll go to our normal monitoring graphs here, looking at the laser rangefinder it's putting in the crater to measure elevation. This is over the past week. So this is an interesting signal that's unusual. It's not what we've seen from this monitor before. We have seen a little bit of this where it looks like there is this kind of jaggedy. This is likely the fountain obscuring the laser from the ground that is trying to shoot out behind it. So we're catching the fountain dancing around different heights. And then we're catching some movement of the ground, but it's not our typical lava flow kind of coming through. It seems like it's actually some of the ground slumps. We saw the images of the cinder sliding and moving around, and that cinder has these big cracks and profiles, right? So if you imagine that cinder hill with these little steps in it sliding past our laser, that's what it looks like to me. We see it kind of sliding past. We see some of these cracks move by. I see it kind of the high point come closer and then move away a little bit, because it's a hill, right? It's got a low point coming across a high point, and so it looks a little bit like that. Although that's really just my best guess at this point, right? Something different is happening here than just lava flow. And as we know, where that laser is pointing more or less, and things are changing there. It's in the area of lava flows and the fountain and of this big pile of cinder that we saw moving around in the time lapses. So that's a guess of what that might be, and cool data to look at. For our tilt, we've seen that recovery pattern here with nothing happening on the green line for the rift zone at Pu'o'o. So this is as expected. Earthquake counts are low here. We do have a step up from an earthquake that occurred today on the south flank. Talk about that here in a few minutes. But otherwise, we're still around our background value with a normal variation. Depth versus time, not a lot going on. You can see there's our south flank event. When we had a summit event that occurred yesterday as well, that was a little bit larger too. So that's where the summit event plots on the map. Flank event is just directly south of the summit. You can see as the summit expands, it would put pressure directly in the south flank here most of all. And so we've seen this low-level small dots activation here for a while and talked about how the south flank is moving, but it's not quite moving very fast or a lot. And at some point, we'll see bigger earthquakes activate as it unlocks. And when it finally does unlock, that might be the beginning of opening the pathway of the East Rift to allow magma to migrate from the summit into there. We're not seeing that yet. We're seeing no signal of magma intruding here yet. We know it's going to happen someday. Not only the southeast, but this can also happen to the southwest with this rift zone as well. But the southeast is the one that moves more and is more active over time. So that's what we're watching for here. This is possibly related to that, reminding us that this is coming someday, but it's not quite here yet. Right now, we're still in the glory days of this episodic summit eruption, and enjoy it while it lasts. So zooming out to the last month time frame, here's what the signal we just looked at of maybe that fountain and possibly a hill moving across the laser here. Normally we see this pattern, right? This is like something like a fountain or a flow coming across and then receding and settling in place at a higher elevation than before. That's what we typically see, right? So we're seeing there was quite a big growth in elevation there, right? From 994 meters down here about to this one is about 1,001. So 7 meters or so, 20 feet. That's why I describe this as a hill that came across here, right? It's a bigger thing than just a flow we've seen in other signals coming through. Okay, our ground tilt signal, there it is as expected. It's rift zone still moving without any inflation there, no magma in the rift zone there. The Sand Hill Station is in the southwest part of the crater, actually not that far from that new little feature I pointed out in the INSAR. So there does seem to be a little interesting thing here. It was pointed out by one of our tracker staff members here that we see this clear signal on the blue component here, like this pattern of growing, recovering ground tilt and the deflation during the episode itself. But on this tangential component on the green, there's going to be a little bit of a pattern where you see it seems to be ramping up in the first part of a recovery. It seems to flatten out, and then it ramps up again in its later part of inflation, kind of alongside of the radial component here. So maybe there's a little signal in here that you can kind of pick out after it flattens out and it starts rising again. Maybe we can see signs of this next episode coming. You guys can watch closely, test this out, and see if we get this leads us to anywhere, and we'll crowdsource this as a possible tell, right? If this was a poker table of what the volcano might do and when it might do it. Okay, our earthquakes for the last month, the counts are not very moving. We can see that the moment has changed, right? So that's this red line. So we had a bigger earthquake down in Pahala a couple weeks ago. The shallow one here did have extra energy release, but not nearly as much as we saw before. So just the context of it looks like really big when nothing else is happening. And in the context of a whole month, it's not as big as even what we had 2 weeks ago. So depth versus time, shallow bands within a volcano, and this is a deep Pahala hotspot feeder zone down here, which operates independently. Okay, for the last 3 months, our pattern continues. What's really interesting is that we had these couple episodes where we had a little bit of delayed onset with this deflationary signal. That seems to have vanished the last couple now. So we'll wait and see. Our most recent tilt drop magnitude was not as great as our most recent ones, right? So shorter duration, didn't last as long, so it didn't drop as far. And maybe that means that the recovery will not have as far to go and will have an onset a little bit sooner than that. This was about 2 weeks, right? So maybe we'll be back to our 1 week, 1.5 week pattern with this slightly smaller magnitude here. And the bigger picture, now the whole 9 months, like I said early on, September 25th today, December 23rd. So we're on full 9 months now. And we're in this regular pattern here for most of the eruption now, kind of in a steady state equilibrium in a way, right? Oscillating around this middle balance point after the initial outbreak and adjustment that happened early on here. Our lava depth keeps stepping up. Earthquakes are low per week ever since eruption began back in mid-December. GPS is still stretching, showing the crater stretching north and south with each interval, and then contracting during the episode and then stretching again. So we're seeing that continuing. And we were not seeing that on the rift zone by Pu'u'o, although currently the data is not updating on the website. Right? We did see the tilt plot showing nothing of concern on there. So those are our monitoring graphs for today. And one other follow-up on the GPS, we did note a couple weeks ago that some of our stations, this outlet one in particular, looked like it might be starting to rise slightly down here. It's too soon to tell what's really happening. Seems to be small magnitude, but we'll keep an eye on that as well, because overall, most of the stations on the summit have been dropping in elevation, even as they stretch apart and release the pressure from below. So this might be an indication of pressure building back up to where something can build a change. Still too early to really be convinced by it, but just following up, we're keeping an eye on this as well over here. It's the only station that really shows that clearly. There are other stations that have little wiggles, but all within the regular range and noise of the data. So it needs to be more convincing than that. Right? Maybe here looks like it maybe went from a downward trend to a slightly, but once again, not quite convincing yet. It's a hinted there, but we need to see more. All right, so we'll move to our earthquakes to wrap up the monitoring signals. This is the last week plotted by depth. Red's shallow, blues deep, yellow's in between. So the blues are deep Pahala zone right through here. It's notable that last week we had, just after update last week, a magnitude 4.1 event that occurred offshore at a depth of 31 kilometers, 19 miles. So a deep Pahala source, hotspot related earthquake that feeds through to all the volcanoes. We have other settling events across the island. Let's zoom in here. Mauna Loa, a couple events settling, one on a northwest flank, really tiny one, but more so on a northeast, where we've speculated, really reminded ourselves that there is an interaction of Mauna Loa and Kīlauea as they both pressurize and push in each other. There can be earthquakes, and we have seen that manifest both on Kīlauea and Mauna Loa in the past, and it seems like we may be entering a similar phase now. And on Kīlauea, we have those summit events through here, of which that larger event is now noted as a 2.4 right here. And down here on the south flank, 3.6, the one from earlier today. Okay. So those are our earthquakes plotted by depth, and we like to also show them in this manner from this other site, sorted by size. So there's our 4.1. Whoop. A little bit uncontrolled zooming there. Okay, 4.1 there. And there's our 3.6 from today. There's a 3.1 also on Deep Pahala cluster. Another 3.1 north on Kohala, also settling, not hotspot, but deep as well. This one's more the hotspot. These might almost be aftershocks of this one. 4.1 at 7:52 and 2.7 at 8:02 that same day. So aftershocks coming through and continuing all through there. A bunch of these magnitude 2s all through there. So we're coming to the summit area here, and the largest one there showing as this 2.4 there in the middle. Okay, so those are the earthquakes. It is worth noting that the 4.1 did cross a threshold that the USGS did put out an alert Thursday evening, noting that there was an earthquake with no impact on anything, basically there. So those are our earthquakes. We'll do one last thing to wrap up, which is our volcano watch here. This week, lava logs and loose cows, the wild job of HVO's technicians. We have an image here of a technician down at South Point with a very friendly horse, very curious horse, nibbling on him there as he is working on this data relay station. So not only do you have to worry about the environment, the terrain of getting there, obstacles, getting the equipment back in near real time. So go read more about this on our streams if you are curious to learn more. And I will stop it there for any further discussions and questions, Dane. where we're going to take
All
us.
right. Thank you, Phil. Let's go ahead and look. We do have a couple questions here for you. Let's go ahead and get into those. So first one is from Norm. Thank you again for the donation. Is there more degassing now than when this first started?
That's a great question. And I don't know that I have a great answer for it, right? I don't have a graph that I could exactly show. I mean, I don't think.
I haven't seen anything for that.
Yeah, I mean, there are the things that there's not a continuous record they can kind of go back all the way back through, right? So the thing is, it's the high measurements. Yeah, the high measurements are usually from like ideal conditions where like they happen in the middle of the day, where they had good wind direction, everyone was out and they were actually measure it, as opposed to like it was less gas. That's what makes it hard to compare. What were you gonna say, Dane?
Just going to say that they're measurements of convenience when it's convenient to go out there and take a measurement, not like you're going out there 20 minutes after the start of the episode every single time or something along those lines. There's too many variables, really.
Right.
Too many things that the wind direction's the wrong way. Now we can't take a measurement, like things like that happen.
Right. They do have other tools that they're using and still calibrating. We've heard about those real-time SO2 cameras for a while. Like they still exist. They're still calibrating. So that kind of thing doesn't get released to us, but they might be being used in the back end as well for their calculations or techniques, right? They can get data from it, but they don't trust the public to get the right data from it by themselves necessarily. That makes it not a good candidate for online, right?
Right. All right. So next question is from Whack. Asks, is the eruptive stream from the vent abrasive? I keep thinking it's fluid, but it's rock.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, great question, Whack. So it is liquid rock, right? So it has that same mass as the rock, and it certainly is abrasive. I'll start with saying that, right? It's abrasive from the actual mass that it's moving. I mean, if I was down there and walking those, however far that is, 2 miles, and dragging that much rock behind me, then I would abrade whatever I was dragging the rock over for sure, right? So that's one aspect of it. Now it is really hot and molten, right? So it can actually, whether it's abrading the stuff underneath it, or whether it's freezing and forming a sheet that's getting abraded, that's a whole other issue. But I'll kind of shift gears here and see that there's another aspect of this most people don't often think about, which is the actual amount of gas in the lava itself. So it's described to me like this, that you actually, if you have gas bubbles within the flow, they actually help concentrate the pressure around the edges of the bubbles themselves. So it becomes more like a sandpaper, right? So think about silica glass. You have a window pane. That silica glass is completely smooth and not really abrasive at all, because it's completely uniform in smoothness. You can also have a sandpaper made out of silica that just has asperities, little bumps where not even on the ground. And on that variation of pressure is what makes it very abrasive. So having bubbles in your lava flow is kind of like having grit on your sandpaper, and it can create extra abrasion if you have extra gas in your flow. This is something that's been studied in lava tubes as they flow and carve channels through the bedrock that they're flowing through. So no definitive answers there, just like some of these ideas that are floating out here about why this is likely an abrasive thing, right? And so it's abrasive. Is it cooling against it, hardening, forming a rock? Is that what's getting abraded? Is it abrading the things below it? That all depends on the specifics of the situation.
Is that a term more used with stratovolcanoes, or is it just kind of universal, the abrasive?
Abrasive, yeah, that's universal, yeah. I mean, right. Abrasion, yeah, it's just, yeah. It's more like like an erosional kind of idea, right? If you're like wearing something down, right?
Right.
And yeah, similarly, when you have like a river that's doing work during a flood, it is the water that's doing a lot of the work, but more so, it's all the sediment and rock, the mass that's being carried by the water that's really helping do the carving as well. So similar in that sense, where you have a load embedded in your fluid that can abrade too. So a lot of concepts I'm throwing in there. I'm going to stop there.
All right. What do you got, Lou?
Hugh had brought this up. Phil, can you drop one of the live cams on the screen for me?
Sure.
He was talking about, and everybody has been noticing. Everybody's been noticing the numbers down in the bottom right, and you can see it PTZ. That's the type of camera. I mean, the pan, tilt, and zoom. There we go, right there. So the P is for the horizontal, and the tilt is for the vertical, and the Z is for the zoom. So the 3.5 is how many times zoomed it's in. That's right there. So the positive is horizontal rotation to the right. Negative is the tilt, and it's going down, and the zoom, you can see right there, 3.5 is how many times it's zoomed in.
And we can tell you those pan tilt zooms are so much easier to set up than any of the old traditional cameras.
Oh, yeah.
You just go throw it out there and then just pan it and tilt it and then lock it, type of thing. And that's what we did with the Pohoiki camera. It's like there was no aligning or anything like that. It's just get it close.
Yep.
And then just pan tilt zoom it to where you need it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's nothing that any of us can control, but it's kind of interesting to have on there. Someday. Maybe Ken will have some way to PayPal or something to control the camera for 5 minutes.
Yeah, wait till we get some ransomware from someone who's like, I'll move it only if you pay me $5.
Just waiting for somebody to get control of their system from the outside. They start seeing their camera start panning and tilting around. Who's doing that?
Spinning.
Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, so it wasn't so much a question, but just an observation. And I'd heard some people talking about it in the background. So I thought I would kind of answer that one.
Yeah, popped up this past week. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Probably more useful if you're trying to collect, if you're using this for data, you actually could use this to reconstruct views and framing and all that, right? It's just, it's actually pretty crucial information in 3D orientation.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yep.
It makes the video feed more valuable.
Yep. All right, I think that might do it. We'll be back Thursday, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, unless something happens. Episode 34, if it were to happen, would not count unless it did something crazy, got outside the caldera, did something different, then we might go live. But
especially if it adds extra threats. That's really what we're all about, is the threats to people. So yeah.
Right. Little novel changes that are cool but don't really change the hazard. We'll post about them on Tracker. That's where we encourage people to go, is Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. If you're not a member of there, it's where all the conversations and the sharing ends up happening. So I encourage you to be there. And if we do go live before then, it's something else.
Yeah. And Tracker is its own crowdsourced fountain of information itself, right? So you guys will see when an episode is building up, people will report and share photographs and videos of what it's doing, even between episodes, after episodes. You can really find everything you would like there. And if not, you can ask, and the audience will have an answer.
Yeah, I just dropped the link to Tracker in the chat, and I'm going to drop it into the description down below if you're watching this on a replay.
Mahalo. All right, guys. So yeah, as I said, we'll be back next week, same time, same place. So from our nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, whose mission is to improve preparedness through volcano education and network building here. For Liwatori, Dane DuPont, I'm Philip Ong. Aloha, everybody.